Meanwhile.
One week. I asked for 1 week. I can't believe it, and I'm sure you can't either, but there's a minimal amount of time left before the college football season is once again kicking off. It felt like yesterday we were making fun of Oregon for selling again like they did the last 100+ years, but with how much drama the offseason has handed us through other sports and Jake Retzloff having sex, we know this to be true. The constant of this sport is none other than chaos. So with the kickoff closing in, that being in the form of none other than Farmageddon of all rivalries, I figured it was a no-brainer to start my preseason videos off with the Big 12 Conference. As history has made it abundantly clear, this is also me getting the hardest part out of the way early. This conference is a no man's land of anarchy, where the top team could fall to a winless conference opponent on any given week, where one injury can derail the entire season, where the weakest team in the conference from a sports betting perspective wound up being the one to win the conference. Over the course of 2024, the Big 12 became a reenactment of the Hunger Games where everyone was slaughtering each other like rabid animals. If it weren't for automatic conference bids in the playoffs, all of you would be cosplaying as Alabama talking about how you'd hypothetically win the playoffs. Not like it mattered, as you fell victim to the different leagues principle anyway. Going into 2025, the expectation for you seems better? Worse? There's absolutely no telling. But I'm gonna tell you anyway. I'm sure that once I'm done with this video and these fans see my prediction for their team, they surely won't take to the comments and wireless keyboards talking about how I've never seen a game in my entire life. Not the college football fan base. They're as reasonable as anime fans when I tell them Dragon Ball Z nor One Piece will ever compare to the cinema of the quintessential quintuplets. Basically, I'm f***ed. Thankfully, I'm not the only one f***ed though. Take a look at everyone else here. Last year was the pinnacle of Sun Devil Nation. As TCU did years before, Arizona State shocked the entire nation and then some. People thought that you'd eventually careen off the cliff like Colorado or Iowa State, but that never happened. You won the conference and then earned the consolation prize of 4th and 13.
To stay alive, can they hook 'em? Touchdown, Matthew Golden!
Even if we conveniently forget that happened, it was a phenomenal year for Kenny Dillingham in his first season. But again, just like TCU, the question must be asked, is this a flash in the pan? No doubt losing Cam Skibity is going to have major ripple effects. They did bring in Army's Kanye West, and that's the new thing now, learn to live with it. But on top of that, they did have a lot of significant talent returning for another year. Sam Leavitt was one of the better quarterbacks in the conference despite his minimal experience. Jordan Tyson, as long as he doesn't get f***ed by injuries, will be a strong force to stop. And if EA College Football 26 is any worth, he'll be unstoppable. They'll have an experienced secondary headlined by Xavion Alford. In fact, most of their team is experienced, with 17 starters returning. They'll have one of the most experienced teams in the country, in fact. The largest concern for the squad has to be their pass rush. 110th in the country in sacks per dropback last year and not addressed through the portal. Clayton Smith and Elijah O'Neal will need to do the heavy work. But if they're as ferocious as Sparky is on the field, then you're in good hands for 2025. I'm rooting for y'all because Kenny Dillingham has the smack-talking enthusiasm missing from most coaches, and he hasn't become an insufferable shoe-eater like Diego Pavia either. With the constant bullshit the conference brings, any record is on the table between 12 wins and 3 wins. And while I think Cam Skibity will certainly be missed, especially here in Tart area, the Sun Devils are still a team that can contend for the playoffs and potentially win a game as long as they don't come into contact with the Longhorn Network. Final prediction, 9-3. And no, I'm not doing game-by-game predictions. You've got enough material to complain about as is. I have to have some level of respect for the Pop-Tart Bowl defending champs. With a program containing as much history as a block of cheese, winning 11 games is an accomplishment Iowa State fans have never seen. Despite getting f***ed over by injuries, the Cyclones come into 2025 with a lot of the same hopes and expectations that they got 8 months ago. Rocco Purdy has returned and is leading the charge for Matt Campbell's 10th season. He's expected to get to 7,000 career passing yards post this season and then some. Losing Jalen Noel and Jaden Higgins will leave some bumps in the road, but with UCF's Xavier Townsend and ECU's Chase Sowell coming in to replace them, their offense will likely continue to run like a well-oiled machine. Along with these weapons, the dual running back duo has returned in Carson Hansen and Abu Sama III. They even have some luxury in the tight end room, and Penn State is very pissed at you for that. On the defensive side of the football, Dominique Orange is returning despite threatening to pull a Nico and bail when convenient to him. They're returning a significance of their linebacker corps, all of which were fucked by injuries last season. But just like the Sun Devils, the pass rush remains their weakest link. They did address this with Tulsa's Vontae Malone, but it's unknown just how much of a difference this will make. Being the Big 12, they'll definitely end up in some close games, making it all the more useful to have a guy like Kyle Conradi on the squad, which I swear is related to Evan McPherson in some capacity. Consider it being lucky or being cursed, but you guys actually get the spotlight before anyone else sees the field, as Farmageddon awaits to kick off the 2024 season. The schedule itself is always a little forgiving, as Iowa is on there as always, but with the season squad, it's not far-fetched to say the Cyclones are also a contender for the 2025 season. You ought to hope it pans out well. Matt Campbell is likely getting an extension for all of eternity. He'll probably live out the rest of his life there and then come back in his second life just to do it all over again. Final prediction, 10-2. Morality is extra high in Bravo this season. Coming off an 11-win season with a blowout win over Deion Sanders and company, the roster is stacked to the brim with talent coming from within and outward. LJ Martin is coming back after a dominant season with the Cougars, while Keelan Marion is out. Leading receiver Chase Roberts returns for his senior year, along with a tight end you poach from your Holy War rival. The line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball is strong as well, with transfers on both sides of the football likely making a difference in the talent department. With many key returners and transfers specifically on the defensive front, it'll be tough to run the ball efficiently on this line. The loss of Harrison Taggart will be tough to counter, but they've done a great job with the likes of Oklahoma State's Justin Kirkland and Keanu Tanavaza, also from the Holy War rival. The secondary remains a concern for BYU, as losing Jacob Robinson and Marquis Collins will have ripple effects that could rear its ugly head if the secondary can't stay healthy. Pending that doesn't happen though, they're set up for greatness in 2025. With expectations this high and a veteran team playing for a veteran coach, I'm sure nothing can cause it to instantly derail, like your quarterback being booted off the team for sex. While Tulane will be feeding off the riches you handed them right before the season, this is a potential disaster for you. It makes sense why this would happen since sex in any capacity is illegal for BYU, but losing the BYU to Tulane could have major implications for your conference slate. Like a ship without the captain to steer it, you're heading straight towards the iceberg we call somewhere in the middle of the Big 12. The guys behind Retzlaff have little to no experience on the field to speak of. Unfortunately, none of your receivers are Jeremiah Smith, so it'll take some skill to score on offense. The Mormon Wall will keep you in a lot of games, as it will keep most Big 12 offenses in check. But with the potential disappearance on the opposite side of the ball, you might turn into your Holy War brethren. The moral of the story is abstinence till marriage. Final prediction, 7-5. Well, I'm going to have to admit I was wrong. For 2 years here, I've been telling you that Colorado was going to be searching for a new head coach going into 2025, as I was sure he was going to follow Shedeur Sanders wherever he wound up being at. But despite Deion Sanders being Deion Sanders, even he couldn't stomach the thought of being stuck with the Cleveland Browns. As the offseason has shown us already, he had other pressing matters on his mind, which thankfully he overcame. It's always a huge victory seeing anyone beat cancer, and I'm glad that Prime himself was able to dominate it too. Following one of Colorado's best seasons as long as I can remember, the Buffs are left with a huge void in the roster with the expected departure of Heisman winner Travis Hunter. Even worse news, Deion will have to patch 2 holes in one for him. Along with his departure, the all too expected outcome happened of which I call the Great Colorado Migration. Under Sanders, huge roster turnover has always been the case, and this offseason it was certainly no exception. Over 50 players entered the portal, many of which were key players to the roster. Deion did manage to collect some key additions in return, such as Liberty's highly touted Kaidon Salter and elite freshman Juju Lewis, who flipped from the condoms. If he actually manages to keep him around, he'll be an incredible asset for the future, but good luck with that. He did an incredible job of finally addressing the offensive line, which has been one of the most god-awful to watch in 2024. Each position has a transfer addition. Lots of building blocks for add to the defense as well, with Alabama's Jaheim Otis being one of the best. If the Millers can stay healthy, Salter will have someone to throw to. This season's Colorado team has a ceiling into the heavens and the floor in the deepest pits of hell, but building your team off the one-year rentals is a very dangerous gamble. Digging for gold in the portal as a football strategy only works if you actually find the diamonds among the piles of dirt. Ask Mike Norvell how that strategy turned out in 2024. You don't even get the privilege of a tune-up game to start the season, as Brent Key and one of the ACC's potential Cinderellas walks into Boulder Week 1. My guess for where you end up is where around Vegas has you set at. Middle of the conference. Far more successful than Deion's year 1, but missing Travis Hunter's insanity off the field. Hopefully it'll still be enough to impress Karuchi Tran. Final prediction, 7-5. It's a minor miracle in itself that the Baylor administration didn't pull the trigger on Dave Aranda too soon. Despite many times we all thought it would happen, they never went through with it. The waiting panned out in the form of an incredible turnaround in 2024, with 6 straight wins in the regular season. The recent success garnered a revolutionized administration, with a newly installed general manager, portal manager, and NIL manager. Wish we had a different leagues manager that spoke like an air raid siren anytime someone tried to prop up the SEC. Anyway, Baylor's squad in 2025 is like a movie reboot when they run out of ideas. They're bringing everyone back. 9 of the 11 starters on offense return, including Sawyer Robinson, who put up video game numbers in the second half of the season. The All-Big 12 receiver and Josh Cameron will also be coming back, along with a much-needed add-on with Kobe Prentice from Alabama. The 1-2 punch in Bryson Washington and Dawson Pendergrass will turn Baylor into an offense equipped to go to the playoffs again if this were the Big 12 of 10 years ago. But thankfully, unlike the Big 12 from 10 years ago, Baylor chose to invest in defense as well. Paul Gonzalez, corners coach from TCU, and Carson Hall from Western Kentucky join as much-needed eyes for the coaching department. If Keaton Thomas in the backfield wasn't enough, they brought in a Conference USA Defensive Player of the Year in Travion Barnes. Baylor has put so much on their defense that they were able to poach from programs like Texas A&M and Ohio State. Knowing how much these programs have in reserves, this came as a major shock. You even got the grace of easy scheduling to start the season, as they've paired you up with the barn for your first game. You might beat them worse than New Mexico State did. In a sink-or-swim environment, Baylor finally brought a pair of floaties and is loading up for a great year. I wouldn't exactly consider this season playoffs or bust for the Bears, but improvement is the bottom line. I know LSU is praying for your downfall. Lord knows they'd take Aranda back yesteryear. Final prediction, 10-2. Every week that goes by feels like another year since TCU made the national championship. Times have changed for the Horned Frogs. They did get a fun victory lap to end out the season by dominating in the New Mexico Bowl, though Sonny Dykes' rebound year has set up TCU with hefty expectations for this season, partly due to the return of Josh Hoover, who set school records from last season with the air raid offense while doing, that. Unfortunately for them, all the receivers who made major contributions to that stat have gone pro, leaving the Horny Toads with minimal options to compensate for this loss. Eric McAllister returning is probably the best thing about the core currently, and he didn't get arrested over the offseason, so bonus points. Getting Jordan Dyer and Joseph Manjack IV are also great additions, but overall, there's a huge net loss. TCU's offensive line was never addressed despite the poor run blocking they had, and without the NFL talent on the receiving core, you're gonna need it. The defense was addressed on all facets with pickups like Kelton Mickle and Elijah Jackson. Additionally, you managed to maintain the top 2025 recruiting class in the conference, and you'll have to do some serious praying to get them to stick around for 4 years. However, as it stands right now, this team overall is worse off than they were last season. Sonny Dykes himself said that anything short of a Big 12 championship would be a disappointment. How do we tell him? Here's the biggest problem. In conferences as big as the one you're in now, you're either spotted with an easy schedule you can slide through with minimal effort, or you get a schedule made by Satan himself. You got the latter. Starting out with the unpredictable North Carolina squad led by Jordan Hudson's wife could cause some serious issues. And if you start out 0-1, the conference slate could end you very quickly. With a schedule like this, especially if the injuries start to pile on you, you'll probably need some of those highly touted recruits to make it through 2025 in one piece. No amount of Fall Guys ass-sounding fight songs can prepare you for what's to come. A small price to pay for selling your souls in the Fiesta Bowl. Final prediction, 5-7. I swear, if you somehow find a way to screw this up, it'll be looked upon as 2022 Texas A&M Electric Boogaloo. Allow me to explain by showing this image. Holy shit! And now you get the idea. Joey McGuire, despite an 8-win season, called it a complete failure. Damn, tell us how you really feel about the Aggies. Following this so-called failure, he went on to do like 30-year-old housewives with rich husbands during Christmas and go on one of the most expensive shopping sprees we've seen in the 21st century. He bought the nation's top transfer portal class, with 18 new additions to the roster. Quentin Joyner, Terrence Carter, Reggie Virgil, Howard Sampson, Hunter Sobrano, Will Jados, Cash Cleveland. But if that wasn't enough, David Bailey, Romello Height, Lee Hunter, Skylar Jill Howard, Anthony Holmes Jr., Cole Wisniewski, Bryce Pollock, Amir Boyd, and even a new fucking punter in Ian Hershey. McGuire sold half the program's resources, most of their reserve money for athletics, and probably a kidney for this roster. This obviously raises questions about ethics in the college football spectrum, but a bigger question is at the helm. How could they possibly f this up? This is a roster capable of bringing the entire thing home, or better yet, winning more than 8 games. The only position room they didn't buff up was the QB room, which belongs to Baron Morton, just about as electric as Josh Hoover. You could have gotten Retzlaff too, but I guess Joey had some faith set on this man. See, last time I placed my faith in the Red Raiders to do something, they went out and lost at the very start of the year to Wyoming. If McGuire was serious about an 8-win season being a failure with the roster he had last season, winning anything short of 10 games of the roster like this is likely to get you sent out of Lubbock in a pine box. I'll do like I did 2 years ago and bite on the lure again. Because of the roster like this, I don't see how you don't live up to expectations. Not sure you'll have anything in reserve for 2026 though. Better go get a GoFundMe started up. Final prediction, 10-2. Chris Kleeman has done well to carry on the legacy Bill Snyder left behind. The fact the Wildcats have become consistent contenders for the conference goes far in showing just how impressive that feat is. An average of 9-win seasons for this program when they were worth the Dodo Birds' diarrhea 30 years ago is something you have to admire. They'll have a great chance to continue said tradition going into this season. Avery Johnson making his return does well for the roster around him. Apparently he spent the offseason getting jacked in the gym, as Matt Wells has been credited for. Though they lose DJ Giddens, the fact they managed to keep Dylan Edwards around is a minor miracle in itself. They'll have plenty of options when it comes to running the football in both a metaphorical and literal sense. While the receiving core looked weak before the season ended, additions of Duran Bradley and Jerron Tibbs did well to add some weapons to the roster. The struggling line was addressed as well, with a complete overhaul of transfers that give Kleeman some depth to work with. While the line on the other side of the football received some upgrades as well, especially with Austin Romaine returning, the same cannot be said for the secondary. Marquez Sigel and Jacob Parrish leaving behind holes that won't be easy to patch, but with the pickup of Jaden Rowe and Gunnar Maldonado, it does help even things out and prevent blinding weaknesses on the defense. Hell, if you're all about pressuring the quarterback, who needs a good secondary anyway? Just like the Cyclones as discussed earlier, the Wildcats give us college football fans the preamble to the college football season and Farmageddon for week 0. The schedule has some tough games, but the jack-of-all-trades roster will likely fare well against the competition they face. They're also the only team in the conference immune to the Kansas disease, of which their entire season gets f***ed over due to the Jayhawks being good for some reason. We'll find out real quick and early whether or not this team is determined for greatness, or if they're determined for another burrito up the sphincter. Final prediction, 9-3. I'm gonna go ahead and apologize to John Denver for what y'all are about to hear, so just get ready. Stop. I can only do that once per year so people pretend I'm good at singing. West Virginia fans can finally take a breath of fresh air. The 6-year-long aneurysm, otherwise known as the Neil Brown era, has finally come to a close following yet another blowout. In his place is a moment nearly 20 years in the making in the form of Rich Rod's return to the country roads. He is tasked with rebuilding a program with a long-forgotten history of sometimes winning games. You know what else is long forgotten? Their 2024 team. They're all gone. Reduced to atoms. The difference between them and Texas Tech is that the Mountaineers bought a team as a necessity. Players like CJ Donaldson, Hudson Clement, and Rickdarius Farmer all bailed on the squad, leaving behind only a few pieces on the team from before: Jaheim White, Reed Caraco, and the starting quarterback, Nico. Thankfully not the Nico you're thinking of. Through their scavenger hunt of transfers, of which they took half the players in the portal, they have acquired some significant talent, including AAC Player of the Year pass rusher Jamori Robinson, Justin Harrington, Ashton Woods, and Ben Bogle. Michael Coates Jr. from Nevada brings experience to the secondary. Their entire O-line is composed of experienced transfers from the South. Cam Vaughn follows his former coach to the country roads in the only position that didn't suffer a mass exodus. The Mountaineers loaded up as many players as they could onto this roster, going over the limit in an attempt to round up as many players on one team as possible. It's this fact alone that makes Rich Rod's first squad almost impossible to predict. He's proven he's still got the coaching part down, as shown in his time at Jacksonville State, and with the schedules unforgiving as always, including a game with Pitt that if game day has any idea what they're doing, they'll be packing your bags for Morgantown Week 3. Like everywhere Rich Rod has been, entertainment for the sake of chaos is guaranteed for or against the Mountaineers. Hopefully the rolling the rope slogan doesn't have the same record as trusting the climb. Final prediction, 7-5. Back to the norm, huh, Kansas? We had a lot of faith in Lance Leopold after the magic of 2022 and the win over undefeated Oklahoma. Among the sparks of being the Dragon Slayer of the conference, you forget to show up for anything not being said dragon. it's resulted in once again falling short of a bowl game. It's clear this team is far more motivated and talented than their previous bowlless squads, as shown by their offensive stats, but constantly throwing hands with the injury bug has thrown Kansas for a loop. Without the consistent depth the other Big 12 teams have, the Jayhawks just wound up getting outpaced. For the sake of said depth, Leopold and staff have put a major emphasis on keeping Jalen Daniels healthy, as that is the key to getting out of this hole they found themselves in. But there's a catch to this. No Devin Neal means no all-time leading rusher returning. Even with 2 incoming transfers, I doubt you'll get the same level of productivity despite LaShawn Williams coming from the paragon of offense in Iowa. The wide receiver group is spearheaded by a brand new group of transfers, with Emmanuel Henderson Jr. being the potential ace in the hole. While they added depth on the O-line, there's no high caliber picks for the team that set them higher than the others. Hell, their line is probably one of the weakest in the conference still. Thankfully, the defense have been significantly upgraded with their own set of transfers, many of which played backups for other power schools. While I do think the defense will take a significant step forward, the offense will take 2 steps back. Protecting Jalen Daniels is a priority, and without a good line to do so, I feel like it's only a matter of time before he inevitably gets put in the injury tent. With the large turnover of Kansas' roster, I don't see how they can bounce back. One problem that arises when you have a bunch of one-year rentals on the roster is you get a bunch of guys that don't see eye to eye with each other. Furthermore, it's tough to get anyone to come to Kansas for anything other than proximity to family or a bag. The only way to compensate for that would be to go the Kyle Whittingham route and coach above your talent composite. And despite the flash in the pan Leopold has shown, I'm not sure it works in their favor for 2025. I'd do the smart thing and reinvest in your basketball program. It does wonders for Kentucky. Final prediction, 5-7. Keep your chin up, Kansas man. Your situation could always be worse, as proven by these individuals. Despite this being their 3rd year in a power conference, they, and by extension everyone who joined them, are still treated like a G5 school. They would have been better off staying there. Last season was thought to be a turning point for Scott Satterfield's tenure, and it was. After a 5-2 start, the Bearcats fell off the face of the earth and didn't even make a bowl. The Big 12 was full of teams that shit themselves on the big stage, but Cincinnati won up them by shitting much harder. Now the pressure is on Satterfield in year 3, where he has yet to take Cincinnati to a bowl game. Dual threat Brendan Sorsby will still be carrying the charge for the Bearcats, and with almost 3,000 yards put up in 2024, he'll be looking to increase those stats even higher. Very similarly to Kansas, he'll have a brand new set of receivers to throw to, the best pickup of which being Texas A&M's Cyrus Allen. These receivers bring some much-needed deep threat with them, so I expect Sorsby to be looking for the explosive plays. Also similarly to Kansas, the offensive line was only addressed so much, but with a guy like Tyree Walker coming in, maybe now Sorsby won't have to pull all the weight. Dante Corleone returns back on the defense following a blood clot issue, and around him are many defensive pickups from the group of 5. With the right coaching, these players coming up into the Power 4 level can share their competition with the big boys of the conference. But we said this exact same the 2 years before, and look how that turned out. Once again, despite the pickups through the portal, this team is arguably worse off without Jordan Robinson or Tony Johnson on the squad. The secondary got poached heavily, and there isn't enough depth there to avoid holes in the latter half of the season. No team ever goes injury-free. Hell, teams are having ACL tears during fall camp. Regardless of the build-up around Sorsby, I don't see it being enough to overcome one of the toughest schedules in the conference. They got you playing Nebraska the very first game of the year. And yes, I know Nebraska most of the time is a pushover, but this year may not be the case. I've got you losing that, but it'll be very telling to how much of a downfall you'll have in 2025. The good news to take from this is that if my predictions are right, Luke Fickell will be open to being welcomed back to Bearcat Nation. Final prediction, 4-8. Just like Cincinnati, Houston is another team still trying to find a successful season after their transition from playing G5 talent to playing the Big 12 talent. Trust me, this isn't tank conference, so there's a huge difference. Year 1 under Willie Fritz was a direct imitation of if Iowa didn't have Grandpa Ferentz coaching experience to bail them out of close games. One of the very worst offenses in the FBS. Despite a somewhat consistently strong defensive front, the offense had followed up with a whole lot of what you get when you ask the magic conch shell what to eat. Nothing. Though Zeon Christ did his part under the Cougar offense, a new man had arrived in town to control the pocket. 8-4's favorite Connor Wegman. Having his job replaced by Marcel Reed, he's come as a lone piece of optimism for Fritz and the Houston offense. A lone face from Fritz's old school joins them in Slade Nagel. He surrounded Wegman with whatever he could find, scavenging the G5 for potential stars like Omari Thomas and Harvey Broussard III. Ball State's rising tight end Tanner Koisiol joined the Cougars as well. They built the line off of transfers from out of their own conference. Over on the defensive side, more transfers come in from the East, including a new defensive coordinator in Florida's Austin Armstrong. As is the tale of Florida's defense, Armstrong is all about defensive aggressiveness, even if it wound up causing big plays to happen. This development is reinforced by guys like Eddie Walls III and Jesus Machado. AJ Halsey and Jeremiah Wilson bailed for the bag too, leaving the secondary with minimal depth, which they answered to. Despite the choice in depth, it's known that it'll be a downgrade from what they had previously. One lingering problem that was addressed earlier with Houston is their status in the conference. They're still considered to be G5 level despite being in the Big 12. Their reputation as such can only be undone through winning seasons and a winning culture entirely. Bad news though, with the reset button being hit once again with a new team and coaching staff behind Fritz himself, they're going to have to ride their wave of bad seasons before getting to a good one. Sure, they'll grab an unexpected win or two, but even bowl eligibility will be a mountain to climb. Houston, we do indeed have a problem. Right now, you're the fodder to Big 12 teams need to push themselves to a higher record. Plus, Oregon State is they're good again. Sorry Cougars, but big boy football comes with big boy standards. Final prediction, 3-9. If there's anyone out there that misses the Pac-12 more than these guys, they frankly don't exist. Once an icon of the conference they resided in changed the moment they jumped conferences to the Big 12. Now they're getting double teamed by the teams they play and the injury bug. Longtime quarterback Cam Rising went down again early with an injury, followed by Isaac Wilson and Brandon Rose suffering a similar fate. They were one more torn ligament away from pulling in fans from the bleachers to wear the pads. Hell, they were catching haymakers from the conference they just got dropped into. $40,000, and how dare you call out ref ball fees. It was a disastrous enough season that Kyle Whittingham dropped Andy Ludwig into the coaching aether for New Mexico's Jason Beck. While it was thought Whittingham was going to call it quits, he's coming back to Utah for the 21st time. With this roster, he's, as every other Big 12 team suffered through, had to make some major transfer portal overhauls. Along with Beck came the replacement for Cam Rising, as the former 7-year quarterback retired from football. Devon Dempier joins the team as what will likely be the starter. If all of them are going to get injured anyway, might as well stack up as many quarterbacks on scholarship as possible. He followed the same ideology with the running back core, as Wayshawn Parker, Naquari Rogers, Bryce Duke, and Devin Green all come from G5 schools to join the party in Salt Lake City. The receiving group also received a major overhaul, with Larry Simmons, Ryan Davis, and Justin Stevenson. Rather than using the portal to buff up the line or the defense in any capacity, Whittingham used the portal entirely for these reasons. The team last year explains exactly why this was the right move for Utah, as they lacked any sort of explosiveness. The only explosions they got were in the form of someone's knees. The team was as ferocious last year as a grain of rice, so if they can get any of that back, they'll be able to compete in the conference. Even with the talent disadvantage, Whittingham is one of the only coaches who will coach above their pay grade on any given Saturday. A fundamentally sound team as Utah can stand with anyone on their schedule, but eventually, I feel the gaps will start to widen out, especially if there's a hole to exploit. This season is less about trying to win the conference and more about getting the long-lost identity back. USC isn't on your schedule to make you look better than you are now, although you do get first honors of humbling a Long Beach diva and Nico Amalivia. Simply getting back to competing in the conference is a major jump from the year previous, so keep doing what you've always have and keep your expectations nowhere above the Las Vegas Bowl, just in case the entire team gets injured again. Final prediction, 7-5. If you thought it's been a long time since TCU's playoff run, think about how long it's been since UCF's anything run back in 2017. It's a pretend title trophy they hold in high regard because it's the only time they've been mentioned in national media. Nowadays, the only time they're put on the big stage are in highlight reels where NFL prospects stun on them. The Gus Bus, which was thought to be said thing to bring them back to glory, drove swiftly into a tree and blew up. Now he's over at the Toilet Knolls in an attempt to rebuild the graveyard they're calling a program. As for UCF, they went the West Virginia route of hiring an old face for their next coach. Unlike West Virginia though, this was much bolder.
What in the goddamn?
In comparison, Rich Rod was winning games last season, while Scott Frost was hiding from Nebraska fans as a car washer for the LA Rams. Nonetheless, he has returned to Central Florida in an attempt to save the program for devastation. For added nostalgia, they bring back Mackenzie Milton, not as a quarterback unfortunately, but as a quarterback coach to help spark some sort of anything into anyone who can throw the football. They have an abundance of choices they picked out from the portal, but it'll likely be Taven Jackson, former Hoosier who led them when Curtis Pork was fighting injuries. Rather than having position battles, they have position wars. Miles Montgomery and Western Michigan's Jaden Nixon will be fighting for dominance in the trenches. As most others in your conference have done, the Knights will have a brand new receiving room and offensive line at the helm. They basically have blocking for rent at this point. The defensive front got a similar treatment, with backups from Power 4 programs taking the mantle up front for the Knights. The secondary received some significant upgrades at Jaden Bellamy from Syracuse, Jair Brown from LSU, among others who have come to start for UCF. Although among the completely revamped and fortified defense the Knights have, there's one lingering giant problem with the defense this year. This one's gonna hit like a flashbang.
What the hell is even that?
We're 8 months into Scott Frost 2 and somehow he's already f***ed up again. All risk, no reward, half full glass. Bowl eligibility would be the goal I'd seek if I were UCF, but with an unforgiving conference schedule and the Grinch's return being something I'm willing to say will be regretted in 2 months, I doubt they'll be much further than that. If Frost sticks around, there's room for a potential rebuild in the future, but with the conference expansion comes the years of growing pains. You can ask Nebraska all about it. Final prediction, 5-7. It's a similar situation for the Wildcats, barely getting by while your brother gets all the riches, and you're stuck with the rags. You're recruiting on a decent basis, but recruits don't come in and make day one impacts unless they absolutely have to. Luckily, you have the excuse of the transitional year, as Jed the Fish's departure left you with a new coach, a new roster, and a new conference to adjust to. You were never going to succeed last year. Well, Noah Fafita stuck around, losing McMillan to the NFL is a move that'll certainly be missed. However, this season, I'm willing to bet Fafita will have at least one more target to throw to. Arizona signed around 50 new players this season, some of them being elite prospects from other programs. One to keep in mind is Texas State's Ismail Mondi, who is a can-do-all-and-more type running back. Chris Hudson from Washington State, along with Trey Spivey and Cameron Barmore, provide much-needed experience for the wide receiver room. Just as everyone else has, they too have loaded up in their lines of scrimmage, with transfers for added power. The defense in particular gained linebacker Blake Gotcher, an FCS All-American and leading tackler. They bring in Javion Cole from Texas, along with other one-year rentals to fill in the hole Tacario Davis left behind. Following their season of struggles, the upcoming class lost a significant chunk of talent to decommits, so the need for improvement is vital if they want to replenish their stock. Since get McMillan down there somewhere is no longer an option, they'll have to return to the fundamentals. Now that they're no longer in a conference dominated by Pacific juggernauts who'll get blasted in the playoffs anyway, they'll have much better odds of winning games between them and similar competition. I'd forget about trying to beat Arizona State right now because baby steps are important in refurnishing a program stuck in the dumpster behind an Arby's. With a much more well-balanced roster, I'm in the belief that they will get to at least playing sometime in December, maybe somewhere beyond the toilet bowl. Final prediction, 6-6. Now that we're scraping the very bottom of the conference turd bowl, the question must be asked. What in the absolute cowboy f*** happened to you? You were projected to be one of the best contenders the Big 12 had to offer last year, and instead of playing in the conference played you. Not only did you lose every game in the Big 12, but you managed to do it all with Ollie Gordon, one of the best running backs your program has ever seen. Coaching of which fits Stillwater, as the brain-eating amoeba took over at some point after they beat Pig Time. With a season as bad as this one, there's no surprise changes have been made inside the Stillwater Legion. Mike Gundy, which is still their gift to football, dropped both Casey Dunn and Brian Nardo into the Aether for new coaches at the helm. TCU's receivers coach Doug Meacham has taken over offensive duties, which will have to find a new way to offense following Gordon's departure. Basically, it's undergoing a factory reset. Zane Flores, a young prospect from Nebraska of all places, is where they will aim their eyes on. Either that or Haas Henji, who followed Meacham here. While the loss of Gordon hurts, of course, they have two different weapons in backs for Trent Howland and freshman Rodney Fields Jr. If something happens to those two, they also have weapons from the portal. The defense has been rebuilt from a similar place too. While Cam Smith, Dylan Smith, and Ian Oates all returned, many of the spots in the roster have been taken by the yearly rentals, many coming from FCS or G5 origin. This will no doubt leave room for growing pains, especially since you had the balls to hire someone all too familiar with the term development. Not exactly Dan Mullen, but close enough. I had to double take and then triple take this hire to make sure it wasn't a Twitter troll post, but it's real. Back from his tenure at Florida, he gets the honors of making a whole other fan base hate him for his over-aggressiveness and lack of caring about downfield protection. Safe to say, 2024 has had some serious ripple effects that will linger for a while. It'll be up to the Stillwater administration to see whether or not they're willing to take it, or if they'll do what UNC did to Mac Brown and tell Gundy to f*** off in the kindest manner possible. Time shall tell. They did you dirty with the schedule, so the best thing to do as an Oklahoma State fan is to remove any ceiling or floor for the team. Everything is possible with them now. Final prediction, 6-6, because it's better to stay in the middle than to reach for the extreme. Y'all really hired Todd fucking Grantham. And there ya have it. Hopefully now you have a little more knowledge on the Big 12 than you did before. I'll likely be wrong on all of these because that's just how the conference is. The only expectation you can hold on to is the expectation that all of your expectations are wrong. Just get a couch, some popcorn, a girlfriend if you somehow have one, and your dad is probably still ranting on the future of NIL and how the government needs to stop it, and just enjoy the season. See you next time, and power to Tardaria.
And all rushing from one side.
The Big 12 opener comes down to this play. Sanders gets the feet set toward the end zone for the